Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are undertaking a really expansive exploration, looking at a highly customized framework that's been sourced from some pretty deep spiritual reflection. Our mission, really, is to understand how the timeless ethical blueprint of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, what we all call the Sunnah, can be practically and, powerfully applied in our modern, hyper-connected, and technology-driven world. Okay, let's unpack this. We're not here for a history lesson that just sits on a shelf. Not at all. We are examining the Sunnah as a dynamic, living system that's designed to provide moral clarity in an age that is, I think we can all agree, defined by a lot of confusion. The sources we've drawn from, they present a really critical diagnosis of the modern condition. They talk about the rise of what they call new idols. And the idea is that while we don't build statues and temples anymore, the worship has, it's just shifted. It's shifted to the self, to the ego, to technology without ethical guardrails, and to systemic economic inequality. We've replaced wood and stone with algorithms and ambition. So the fundamental questions guiding us today are not simple ones.
How do we practically and effectively embody the ethics of the Sunnah in an environment that is just increasingly dominated by AI? And what does it truly mean right now to build a life centered on those twin, indispensable pillars of mercy, or Rahmah and excellence, or Iḥsān? We really need a detailed roadmap, not just abstract concepts.
And that detail, that operational framework, is exactly what makes this deep dive so compelling. I think we have to just dismiss the idea that the prophetic legacy is some kind of museum piece. The source material is very, very clear on this. The conclusion of the prophet's physical journey was not finality. It was actually the ultimate moment of renewal and transmission. His Sunnah immediately became the enduring, adaptable constitution for every single generation that followed. So the core takeaway we have to internalize right from the start is this. The Sunnah is explicitly described not as an archive of history, but as the engine of human flourishing. I mean, if you are looking for a system that maximizes integrity, purpose, and impact, the sources argue this is it. It is the operational guide for thriving in this life, precisely because it focuses on eternal results in the next.
I really appreciate that framing of the Sunnah as an engine, because modern life is all about systems, isn't it? Software systems, economic systems, productivity systems. We're constantly on this search for the perfect self-help formula, yet the sources suggest that the most comprehensive blueprint has been available to us for 14 centuries. Let's delve deeper into those new idols, because it's a powerful concept. It's easy to talk about technology as just a neutral tool, but how does our current relationship with it, turn it into an object of worship, a modern idol?
Well, it happens when we start to assign it divine attributes, things like omniscience and infallibility. It happens when we assume that the algorithm is always fair, or that data is always correct simply because it is data. When we let the metric govern the moral choice, or when convenience overrides consequence. That right there is the worship of technology.
That's a very clear definition. And for the ego?
Similarly, the ego becomes an idol when self-promotion, self-interest, and self-validation become the primary fuel for our actions. When it sidelines any concept of service or accountability to something higher. The prophetic journey, in complete contrast, is fundamentally a purification process. It's designed to dismantle these three forms of worship.
So in response to these challenges, this is where the framework comes in.
Exactly. In direct response to these pervasive ethical challenges, the sources introduce a beautifully structured 5-stage model for both personal and collective progress. And it directly mirrors the trajectory of the prophet's life. They title this the C-Beta framework. It's an acronym for conceive, believe, act, transform, and achieve.
C-Beta. Okay.
What's truly insightful here is how this takes a profound, incredibly complex life story and renders it into an accessible, iterative methodology. It's not just theology, it's methodology. Every single stage is a deliberate model of faith in action, and it gives the believer a concrete method to move from that internal clarity to an external impact that benefits the entire community.
This framework feels foundational, so let's dedicate the necessary time to really fully unpack C-Beta. This seems like it's the roadmap for everything from how we manage our finances to how we conduct ourselves online. So it starts with conceive. But as you mentioned, this is more than just, making a to-do list.
Oh, much more. It is the ultimate filtering stage. Conceive is all about purifying your vision, ensuring the niyya, the intention, is absolutely pristine. Most secular planning, it starts with the question, what do I want? Conceive starts with a completely different question. What does Allah want from me in this moment with these resources?
That's a radical shift in perspective.
It's a total reorientation. In a world where our career paths, our financial targets, our relationship goals are constantly being dictated by external consumerist pressures, Conceive requires this rigorous self-interrogation. So if my goal is to build a successful company, does my definition of success primarily benefit my shareholders? Or does it also uplift my employees, serve the wider community, and adhere to justice?
So you're defining success by a different metric, not just size, but
By its alignment. Exactly. We are asked to define success not just by its size, but by its alignment with divine principles. Because if the vision is flawed at the source, then all the subsequent actions are misdirected, no matter how well you execute them. We have to make sure the why is sacred before we ever define the what and the how.
okay, so if conceive is about alignment and the purification of intention, the next step, believe connect, moves us into the realm of spiritual and social grounding. How do the sources distinguish this from, a more passive kind of faith?
It emphasizes active trust, or tawakkul. It moves beyond a simple intellectual acceptance to building an inner certainty that your efforts, once they're sincerely made and coupled with that purified intention, are subject to a greater benevolent plan.
Which would, I imagine, help with the anxiety of modern life.
It completely mitigates the crippling anxiety of our modern outcome-based performance culture. You do your best, and you trust. It's a release. But the connect part is the crucial social grounding. Belief must be fortified by tangible relationships. The isolation inherent in modern competitive life, these digital silos we live in, can so easily erode our faith and our moral resolve.
Right, you can't do it alone.
You can't. Therefore, the sources stress actively strengthening faith through consistent practice, nurturing the bonds within the family structure as the first institution of learning, and investing deeply in your immediate community. This turns that abstract belief into a supportive, resilient social network, which then becomes the practical strength you need to carry out the mission you conceived in the first step.
That's a critical bridge. It makes so much sense. You can have the best intentions in the world, but without that spiritual resilience and the communal support system, the execution is probably going to fail. This brings us to the operational phase, act. How does the concept of prophetic action differ from the secular concept of hustle or productivity that we hear so much about?
It differs entirely in its orientation. Secular action is often driven by self-aggrandizement, efficiency for profit, or forceful control to maintain a competitive advantage. The Sunnah-based action, as outlined in the sources, is focused on tangible implementation that reflects those purified values. And critically, the leadership model has to be defined by service, not by control.
Service, not control. What does that look like practically?
Well, think about the prophet's leadership. Every single action, whether it was sweeping the mosque, mending his own clothes, or distributing more spoils, was marked by service. So for the modern leader, this means shifting the entire paradigm from managing subordinates to serving the people who make the results possible.
So in a corporate setting, what would that be?
In a corporate setting, this could mean prioritizing employee development over just maximizing short-term shareholder gain. Or it could mean ensuring ethical supply chains, even if they increase your production costs slightly. True action must benefit those it touches, reflecting that servant leadership model.
But I have to ask, doesn't that emphasis on collective benefit and servant leadership, doesn't it inherently contradict the hyper-individualistic reward system of our current global corporate environment? I mean, how does one act successfully in a cutthroat industry while leading by service?
That is the essential challenge. And that is precisely where the framework becomes revolutionary, not merely descriptive. It demands that you redefine success within that environment.
So you're not leaving the system, you're changing it from within.
They're demonstrating that integrity, transparency, and justice are themselves competitive advantages. They build trust, they foster loyalty, and they ensure long-term sustainability. It means taking the prophet's example of meticulously fulfilling contracts and upholding trustworthiness, his title was Al-Amin, the trustworthy, and applying it to everything. From your coding ethics to your marketing claims. It means consciously choosing to build systems that serve justice rather than exploit loopholes for the maximum personal gain.
And of course, once we act, there are always going to be setbacks, resistance, or just the need for refinement. And that leads us to the fourth step, transform.
Transformation is the required internal process of iterative growth. Growth is never a straight line. If we act sincerely, we will inevitably encounter failure, resistance, or new information that challenges our original method. This step emphasizes growth through adversity, seeing those challenges not as reasons to quit, but as divinely guided opportunities for deeper learning and refinement. It's a mindset shift.
A spiritual and moral audit, almost.
Exactly. It necessitates constant spiritual and moral auditing. We have to adopt the prophetic practice of consistent reflection and seeking renewal, Istafar. You have to ask, am I still adhering to my values? Is my action still aligned with my original intention? Where did my methodology fall short? In a tech project, for example, this is the difference between simply patching a bug and deeply analyzing the flaw in the original design process to prevent future errors. It is moral and spiritual maintenance, ensuring you are constantly renewing your commitment to the path of excellence.
And finally, this entire 5-stage process culminates in achieve. So, given that we've already redefined the purpose and conceive and the method and act, how does the CBATA framework define true achievement?
Achievement in this context is measured against a dual criteria. This is really important. Firstly, the result must benefit others. It has to possess measurable, positive worldly utility for society. Secondly, and just as important, it must earn divine approval. This means the result has to be achieved through permissible and ethical means. The ends do not justify the means.
Right. So you could have a huge success on paper, but if the process was corrupt,
it's not true achievement, exactly. So if a multi-billion-dollar startup achieves massive wealth accumulation, but did so by exploiting labor, ignoring environmental standards, or engaging in manipulative business practices within this framework, that is not true achievement. Conversely, if a sincere effort yields modest worldly success but profoundly benefits a few people and maintains absolute spiritual integrity throughout the entire process, that is the true achievement. The standard is holistic. Success is defined not just by output, but by purity of process and lasting benefit.
so that's a profound redefinition of success. The CBATA framework gives us the roadmap, but the engine that powers that map must run on a specific kind of fuel. And that brings us to the first of the two essential pillars you mentioned, mercy or Rama. The source material is so emphatic on this, arguing that every single action of the prophet, from his personal revelations to his largest public policy decisions, was powered by Rama.
Yes.
This suggests mercy isn't just a nice virtue to have, it's the default operating system. It's the underlying logic for how one engages with the world, both the digital and the physical.
And this is where the popular secular conception of mercy as softness has to be corrected. To prevent us from misinterpreting mercy as weakness, the source material provides a definition of Rama that is deeply, deeply nuanced. It is power plus restraint plus love.
Power, restraint, and love.
Okay. This definition is crucial because it reframes mercy as a profound strength. It's not the inability to retaliate, it is the capacity to retaliate, coupled with the will to restrain that capacity, all guided by a deep, proactive love for humanity. It is strength refined and channeled by humility and compassion.
That is a much richer and more powerful definition. And the sources use historical narratives to illustrate this strength, particularly the painful moment of forgiveness at the Thai. Could you walk us through that context and how it exemplifies power, restraint, and love?
Absolutely. The incident at Taif is the ultimate test case for this definition. The prophet traveled there seeking support, only to be rejected and subjected to just intense cruelty. The people incited children and slaves to stone him until his sandals were soaked with his own blood. It was a moment of profound physical injury and just utter emotional exhaustion.
Imaginable, really.
It is. And in that moment, after his heartfelt, desperate prayer, the angel of the mountains appeared and offered him the ultimate retribution, the power to crush the people of Taif between the two surrounding mountains. That was power, instantly available. Just say the word.
And no one would have blamed him.
No one. But the prophet, despite the injury and the provocation, chose restraint. He refused the annihilation. And his response, his prayer, was the very embodiment of love. He said, "No, I hope that Allah will bring forth from their loins a people who will worship Allah alone." He looked past their immediate brutal transgression and saw their potential. He saw their future salvation. That choice, refusing to use overwhelming force when it was justified and available, and opting instead for a future of hope, is the perfect, raw demonstration of Rama as a potent, active force. It sets the precedent for all subsequent leadership choices.
But that context makes the definition so much more visceral. You understand that Rama isn't passive. It's an active choice of ethical leadership. So connecting this strength of mercy to modern high-pressure contexts, how does this core operating system function in an environment that's often characterized by intense competition and very low patience?
The sources map this application onto three primary spheres of modern life. Firstly, in the workplace. The application is leading with empathy, but that needs to be defined. True workplace Rama does not mean ignoring production targets or performance issues. It means managing people, not just tasks. It means recognizing their humanity within the professional context.
So what's a concrete example of that?
For example, if an employee is underperforming, applying Rahma means you investigate the why. Are they facing health challenges, family difficulties, a lack of training? It means offering clear communication and a dignified path forward, whether that's remediation or, if necessary, a respectful separation. It means choosing the difficult path of patience and clear guidance over the easy path of immediate, unthinking termination. This redefines efficiency as human-centered and sustainable.
That's a powerful point. Mercy doesn't abolish accountability, it perfects the process of accountability.
Exactly. Secondly, in families, the principle of guiding others with patience is paramount. Modern family life is assaulted by external media, academic pressures, and technology. Applying Rahma here means understanding that development requires time, space, and gentle correction, particularly with children. It means practicing the same consistent gentleness the Prophet showed, where errors were met with correction and a soft touch, not coercion or aggressive punishment. It creates a home built on trust, which is the most resilient foundation for personal growth you can have.
And finally, the digital realm. As we noted, the internet often incentivizes outrage. It rewards polarization because conflict generates clicks and engagement. How can Rahma possibly survive in that ecosystem?
The mandate for the online or digital space is perhaps the most challenging, but it's also the most essential. It is the commitment to respond with grace, not aggression.
Grace, not aggression.
This is the immediate daily application of restraint. When someone provokes you online or fundamentally misunderstands your position, the immediate digital reflex is to use the available power-harsh words and aggressive tone, public shaming. Applying Rahma means actively restraining that impulse. It sets a profound standard for digital discourse, insisting on respectful engagement even in the heat of disagreement. The source material suggests that choosing grace over aggression online is one of the quickest ways for a person to demonstrate that their strength is indeed refined by humility. It transforms the online space from a battleground into a potential forum for constructive dialogue, reflecting the Prophet's desire for reconciliation, not division.
Okay, so if Rahma defines the spirit and the intention behind our actions, our core OS, then the second pillar, Iḥsān or excellence, dictates the quality control, the standard of execution for every action that system produces.
That's right. This is the practical complement. It elevates daily effort from mere obligation to an act of worship. We ground this concept in that famous hadith where the Prophet declared, Allah has prescribed excellence in everything. This is a universal mandate. Excellence isn't optional, and it's not restricted to religious rituals. It applies to every single aspect of your existence.
And this shifts the focus from competitive achievement, being better than your neighbor, to an internal sense of quality. The core meaning of Iḥsān being that you do everything as if Allah is watching you.
That is the absolute essence of it. It means infusing an acute, sacred awareness into every single task. If my ultimate audience is the divine, the standard of quality inherently changes. It doesn't matter if you are a surgeon, a teacher, a carpenter, or, most relevant for our discussion today, a software engineer. The work is elevated because the intention is perfected, and the execution aims for completeness and beauty. You are performing an act of worship through your vocation.
Which implies that the standard of good enough is simply insufficient. The pursuit of Iḥsān demands perfection, or at least the sincere pursuit of perfection, knowing that the quality of the effort is visible to a higher observer.
Right, and this commitment to non-negotiable quality becomes intensely relevant in our current technological climate. We are living in an era of unprecedented automation and AI.
Automation increases speed and efficiency, for sure, but it often leads to standardization, and sometimes, unfortunately, it strips the work of human engagement, or what you might call its soul.
Exactly, and the critical argument presented in the sources, one we really need to digest, is that in the AI era, where automation increases speed, Iḥsān restores soul to the work being done. If a machine can perform the task faster, Iḥsān compels the human to ensure the machine is performing the right task with the right intention and with the highest possible level of ethical integrity.
So how does that apply in a practical sense?
The practical application here is replacing the corporate mindset of minimally viable product or good enough for market release with the intention of done beautifully for Allah. This commitment to aesthetic and moral perfection directly impacts how we design our technology.
Let's talk about software and AI development specifically. What does Iḥsān demand of the code itself?
It demands justice in the algorithm. It means ensuring that systems are not designed for planned obsolescence. That is a violation of the spirit of AIAW because it's inherently wasteful and manipulative. It mandates meticulous attention to user data security, treating personal information not as a commodity to be exploited, but as a sacred trust, an amana that must be protected with the utmost care.
That is a powerful ethical mandate.
Yeah.
It moves the conversation from the superficial design elements, the user interface, to the very engineering structure of the technology. AIAW demands transparency and fairness within the AI's decision-making process.
Absolutely. AIAW must guide the ethics of data stewardship. When you're building an AI model, the data scientists, informed by this principle of AIAW, must actively work to mitigate bias. If the algorithm is deployed for justice or for lending or for hiring, any bias built into that system immediately translates into automated inequality. And that's a direct violation of Rama and the requirement for excellence and justice.
So AIAW demands that the code itself, even the parts the end user will never see, be just and secure.
And beneficial. We have to remember the comprehensive nature of the prophetic model. AIAW wasn't just for grand public acts. He applied Iḥsān in his prayer, ensuring full mental and spiritual presence, or khushu. He applied it in his speech, using clarity and wisdom, avoiding unnecessary verbosity or confusion. And even in conflict resolution, he sought the most just and equitable outcome, regardless of the personal cost. This demonstrates that AIAW is not situational. It's the non-negotiable default quality of a sincere life, and we absolutely must extend that sincerity to our most powerful tools.
Moving from the personal standard of AIAW in our work, we now have to confront the modern reality of amplified influence. One post, one tweet, one carefully constructed video can reach millions of people instantly. This explosion of reach means that our ethical footprint is no longer confined to our local community or our workplace. It carries immense global weight.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this heightened visibility and instantaneous reach means that the Ummah must consciously work to reclaim its historical role as the world's ethical conscience. In the digital age, this commitment to ethical representation is absolutely critical. Every person who identifies with this tradition and is active online is, in some capacity, representing the Prophet's legacy to the world. Their digital behavior becomes a public testimony.
That's a staggering burden of responsibility, especially when you consider how often social media encourages rash judgments and fleeting emotional reactions. How do we ensure that digital representation, which is so often immediate and anonymous, upholds this standard of Iḥsān and Rama?
This immense responsibility necessitates an ethical filter, one that you apply before every single engagement. And the essential reflection question presented in the source material is the perfect instantaneous ethical check. Before you post, before you click send, you have to sincerely ask yourself, would this please him?
Wow, that's a powerful filter.
That single question forces an immediate shift in intention and perspective. It instantly elevates the interaction from a casual reaction driven by ego or anger to a considered ethical action driven by the standard of mercy and excellence. Would he engage in this language? Would he share content that promotes division? Would he sacrifice truth for speed? This question becomes the gateway to your personal digital sunnah.
Let's define that term, digital sunnah. If Rama is grace and Iḥsān is integrity, what are the practical rules that the sources derive for our online conduct?
First and foremost is the mandate to spread knowledge, not noise. Noise is the trivial, the reactive, the inflammatory content. It is gossip. It is baseless rumor. It's engaging in pointless, circular debates that are just driven by ego.
And we see so much of that.
So much. Knowledge, on the other hand, is content that educates, informs, brings benefit, and calms rather than excites conflict. A person committed to Iḥsān uses their digital platform to deliver content that is meticulously sourced, beneficial, and presented with eloquence and grace.
So it's about the quality and intent of the information.
Exactly. Secondly, there is the necessity of proactive good. Building platforms specifically for good purposes. We have to move beyond merely correcting bad behavior online to leveraging technology's power to create spaces for justice, for charity, for education, and for artistic expression that's infused with ethical value. This means transforming technology from a distraction into a dedicated tool for service to humanity.
And linking that back to AI, how does our digital conduct intersect with the tools that we're building?
It creates the moral imperative for the ethical use of AI. The technology must be employed to serve justice, not manipulation. In the digital sphere, manipulation takes so many forms: misinformation campaigns, subtle algorithm tweaking to promote addictive consumption, or predatory marketing. A digital Sunnah demands that technology professionals use their skills to counter these manipulations.
So it's a moral battlefield.
It is a moral battlefield, and Iḥsān is the armor. We must ensure that our digital advocacy, whether it's in defense of human rights or the environment, reflects the principles of Rama. It has to be powerful yet restrained, and driven by a universal love for humanity, not partisan aggression. The only way to be the world's ethical conscience is to embody that ethical conscience in every single one of our online interactions.
We have established this intensely personal and practical nature of the framework. We have the CBATA roadmap, the twin pillars of Ram and Iḥsān, especially in the digital context. Now we have to address the ultimate question of scale. How does this personal ethical transformation translate into global impact?
Well, the foundation is rooted in that Qur'anic principle. Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves.
So it starts from the inside out.
Always. This firmly anchors societal reform in individual, spiritual, and moral reform.
And that's a radical concept because it rejects top-down mandates as the only driver of change. It emphasizes the critical sequence of the prophetic method. He changed hearts before he changed laws.
He established the spiritual foundation, the commitment to mercy, and the purified intention within his followers first.
Right. The internal work had to come first.
It had to. Only after this internal transformation took deep root, after they were committed to serving others, to treating their neighbors justly, and to practicing excellence in all their dealings, only then did the formal societal structures and legal frameworks follow. If you attempt to enforce ethical laws upon an ethically compromised society, the system will eventually fail because it lacks an internal moral bedrock. According to this framework, reforming the soul is the necessary prerequisite for reforming the global community.
That puts the burden of global change squarely on the listener's shoulders then. Our individual lives become the laboratories for societal renewal.
They are. The sources emphasize that every single sphere of your life is an opportunity for sacred practice. Your home, your business, your educational institution, they all become instruments of revival when they are intentionally infused with the Sunnah. The moment a leader brings Iḥsān into their financial decision-making, ensuring fair wages and ethical investments, or a parent brings Rama into guiding their children, those local spaces are sanctified. They act as catalysts for wider transformation.
A ripple effect.
A powerful one. And the modern reflection is crucial. Global revival starts with one reformed soul committed to these standards. If enough individuals, particularly those who are engaged in high-impact fields like technology, finance, and governance, commit to living these standards of mercy and excellence, the collective consciousness and the very structures of society will inevitably begin to shift toward justice and beauty. This commitment defines the next frontier for us as a civilization. We must merge prophetic ethics, this timeless framework of Rapa and Iḥsān, with technological progress to shape a global civilization that is not only highly efficient and interconnected, but is profoundly humane, just, and spiritually anchored. This is the definition of a renewed and just civilization.
So what does this all mean? Our deep dive today has moved far beyond abstract theology. We've really uncovered a powerful, actionable framework for navigating the pressures and the possibilities of the AI era, centered on eternal principles. We've established that the Sunnah is a timeless, highly relevant operating system for every decision we make. We have the CBATA model, conceive, believe, act, transform, achieve, as our personal roadmap for moving from intention to impactful results. And critically, mercy and excellence, Rama and Iḥsān, are the indispensable twin pillars, providing the necessary method, which is grace, and the standard, which is integrity, for prophetic leadership in the 21st century.
To conclude, we can turn to that beautiful analogy of lasting influence shared in the sources. The example of me and you is like a man who lit a fire, people gather to it for light. This reminds us that this legacy is not meant to be passively observed. It is an active, burning light source.
And that light is sustained by our actions.
Exactly. That light still burns today, and it is sustained by your actions. It is manifested in every act of kindness you perform, every pursuit of justice you undertake, and every sincere commitment to quality you uphold in your work. The vision remains to rebuild the world with mercy as method and Iḥsān as standard.
And this leaves us with our final challenge for you, the listener, based on the source's own reflection notes for practical implementation. The deepest commitment is to become a living Sunnah, a person whose very presence reflects peace, truth, and genuine service. So our closing question for you to explore immediately, starting right now, has two parts. First, What are 5 specific prophetic habits? Whether in patience, speech, honesty, or simple acts of kindness, what are 5 habits you will commit to practicing daily, consistently, starting today? And secondly, how will you define your personal digital sunnah? That is, your commitment to online integrity, grace, and purposeful content creation, ensuring your digital footprint reflects the high standard of Iḥsān. The transformation begins with that conscious, committed effort.